right. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into the mechanics and design of D&D classes and subclasses to give you the best idea of how they were designed to work and how to get the most out of playing them. So today we're going to be continuing with the psionic subclasses, Unearthed Arcana. And today we're actually going to be dealing with a rogue subclass. Excuse me. Called the Soulknife. Now, just to kind of review what we talked about last time, psionics are basically psychic powers in D&D. They've shown up in various editions since, I believe, second edition. They're a huge part of the Dark Sun campaign setting, to the point where you can't really have the Dark Sun campaign setting without psionics. And they've been a little bit divisive, to say the least. Previously, they had created a class called the Mystic that was entirely psionic based, and it just didn't seem to work. There was too many things that it was doing that other classes were already doing, so it was hard making it feel unique. So they decided to go with subclasses that have psionic abilities instead of an entire class based on it. And the connecting feature of all these psionic classes is what's called the psionic talent die, which is basically, it starts as a D6, and when you use your abilities, you generally will roll it. And if you roll the max on the die, it will actually shrink down to the next smaller die. So if it goes from a so if it was a D6, you rolled a 6, it would go down to a D4. If you roll the lowest number, a 1, it'll go up. So if you roll a 1 on a D4, you'll upgrade it to a D6 up to whatever your maximum die is at that point. As you gain more levels, your die becomes bigger. 8th at a D8 at 5th level, a D10 at 11th, and a D12 at 17th. So that's the basics of the psionic thing, and now we're going to look at how the Soulknife uses those options. So the Soulknife itself, and one thing I forgot to mention about the Psionic, if you read the description before you get into the mechanics of the class, it actually does mention it mentions the world of Athos, which is the Dark Sun, along with how these these psi-based subclasses work in a bunch of different settings. So they talk about in the world of Athos, a sorcerer king often turns to a soul knife to eliminate an enemy. Just as an insurgent soul knife seeks to undermine that sorcerer king's rule. So read the description of these classes, because not only do they give you really good lore to go off of, they also will introduce you to different campaign settings and things, and kind of describe how these subclasses work in those campaign settings, which, if you are running either your own custom campaign or are just running a pre-written campaign, they do kind of give you ideas of how you might insert these subclasses in there in unique ways. So that being said, let's start off with the third level ability. It's the same third level ability you get with the Psionic, just with a couple different things. And I do want to kind of mention the uh, the kind of defining features of the rogue. Again, with every class in fifth edition, the design elements that are present that make it unique should show up within the first two levels, and the subclass should either expand what those options can do, which is kind of what the Psionic did a lot of, or they should make those abilities stronger in some way, so they're more valuable to the class for the specific use. So that being said, the rogue, their kind of defining features are sneak attack. That is the one that most people think of with a rogue. Is they can do crazy high damage, which is great. But there's other aspects of the rogue that people tend to kind of forget or downplay. They get what's called expertise, which basically means they have a few skills that they get to double their proficiency bonus on, which makes them uber powerful in those specific things. I see a lot of rogues will take like the thieves tools and stealth as their expertise things, and as they get to higher levels, they get more expertise. Excuse me, just that's something in my throat. It's not helping that I'm drinking milk, which creates more gunk. Chocolate milk, to be specific, because I am 4 years old. Yeah, you have that expertise that makes them really good at certain checks, and then you also have the cunning action, the other kind of defining feature, which gives them the ability to use their bonus action in a lot more ways than most classes. They can disengage with it. They can try to hide with it. They can to try to dash with it, making them hyper mobile. So those are kind of the defining features of the rogue. And let's see how the Soulknife will emphasize them. So for first things first, again, at the third level, you get Psionic talent. It gives you your Psionic talent die, and it also gives you that Psi replenishment we talked in the last video, where basically you have a bonus action that you can use once per long rest, and it basically just gives you your Psionic talent die back if you lost it due to rolling a 4 on a D4. Because once it gets to a D4, it can't get any smaller. Yeah, it's got that, but it's got some different abilities compared to the Psionites. You have bolstered knack, which is basically if you fail an ability check using a skill or tool with which you have proficiency, you can roll your Psionic talent die and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning failure into success. This feeds into expertise really well. Again, expertise, they're already going to have high scores. This is literally anything they have to trained. They can just add that little bit extra whenever they need it using their psionic powers. This makes them even better at succeeding on those checks when you really need it. And even if they only have their D4, sometimes 2 or 3 is all that the only difference between a success and a failure. So interesting a thing. It kind of expands the expertise idea to make them just even better at other tasks. It does require them to be proficient in the skill, so they can't use it for just any skill. So it does limit it a little bit, but I think it fits the rogue really well. I often joke that rogues are just like this shy of being massively broken, and that's generally due to expertise, making it so that at higher levels they very rarely fail a check involving expertise. Generally, if they are going to fail a check, it's going to be something they're not expert. They don't have expertise in, or just completely untrained. This means the things that they are trained in but don't have expertise in are still going to be giving them but positive results more often. Which I think with the other things that you lose by being a Soulknife, I think it's a good trade-off. It makes an interesting character choice. Second thing they get is they get what's called Psionic Whispers. As an action, you give yourself and at least one other creature the ability to speak telepathically with each other. When you do so, roll your psionic talent die and choose creatures you can see up to a number of creatures equal to the number you rolled. And then for an hour, they can speak telepathically with you, and you can speak telepathically with them. And you have to be within a mile in order to telepath. This is massively cool. I have been in quite a few situations where specifically great old one warlocks get the ability to telepath, but generally it's only like a single message to a single person. And we've basically used a great old on warlock to have conversations while we're being monitored or while we can't really talk. With Psionic Whispers, you can do this potentially with your entire party, depending on what you roll. And you get it for an hour. For infiltration type adventures, of which there are many, this is unbelievably valuable. The ability for like your rogue to go forward and then just tell you everything, instead of having to try and sneak back and then quietly to talk and hope that nobody hears you. No, this is completely silent communication. And I cannot really overemphasize how useful that can be if you're creative players. Now, something I find a little bit interesting about just this psionic talent feature for the rogue, neither of these things are combat abilities, which when we go back to this is a Psi-Knight, most of their psionic talent features were combat based, but again, it's a fighter. That's what they do. Rogues, well, yes, they are kind of combat focused. They have a lot of outside of combat stuff, and so I like the fact that the Psi talent specifically is designed around that idea of giving them usefulness outside of their sneak attack, which is already really useful. However, they do get another third level feature, which is called Psychic Blades, and I think this is probably my favorite aspect of this subclass. The basics of it: whenever you're about to make a melee or range weapon attack against a creature, you can manifest a Psychic Blade from your free hand and make the attack with that blade. This magic blade is a simple melee weapon with the finesse and thrown properties. It has a normal range of 60 feet and no long range, and on a hit it deals psychic damage equal to 1d6 plus the ability modifier used for the attack. The blade vanishes immediately after it hit or misses the target. It leaves no mark on the target if it deals damage. So that on its own is really cool. Instead of being most rogues, you kind of have to choose if you want to, and I used to ask people this when I would build them their first character. Okay, do you want to be a stabby rogue or a shooty rogue? And shooty would use a crossbow or short bow, and stabby would use a dagger or a short sword. With this, you can do both. 60 feet is actually a really good range for the thrown weapon. Doesn't really matter that it doesn't have a long range, because if you can't, as a rogue, if you can't get within 60 feet of your target, you're doing something wrong. And it lets you throw weapons as your primary attack. One of the issues in 5th edition in general is being a thrown weapon character generally requires some sort of a magic item or spell or something you have to create in order for them to be able to continue throwing daggers. If you think about or throwing weapons in general, with a dagger or a hammer or whatever, if you think about Vax from the first Critical Role campaign, they actually had to give him a special belt, I believe it was either belt or bracer, that whenever he threw one of his daggers, after it hit, it would disappear and appear back on his person again, so he could dagger when he was using his boost of hates. With the psychic blades, you actually can do that without having to have some sort of magic item to do it with. And this isn't the end of it. Second part, after you attack with a blade, you can make a melee or ranged attack with a second psychic blade as a bonus action on the same turn, provided your other hand is free to create it. The damage die of this bonus attack is a D4 instead of a D6. So you can actually throw your first one, throw a second one, and really kind of embody that knife throwing character that you can't really play in 5th edition too well without playing with quite a few mechanics, or having like an artificer in the party that can give you a weapon that returns. So I like this. I like that they give you another thing to use your bonus action for. So kind of dealing with that cunning action where you can choose, do I want to use my cunning action this turn? Do I want to use my extra psychic blade? You know, it gives a lot of choice to the player, and it looks cool from just a visual perspective. You going around just going and throwing, psychic knives. It's awesome. So now we move to the 9th level of ability, which improves the psychic blades features specifically. So this is going to be more combat oriented. You get to two new things you can do. You have what's called homing strikes, where if you make an attack roll with your psychic blades and miss the target, you can roll your psionic talent die and add the number you roll to the attack roll. And if that causes it to hit, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 die size, regardless of the number rolled. So this just again makes it much more likely they're going to hit. And it only goes into effect if you miss. So there is that benefit of, well, I don't have to waste psionic talent die unless I miss with it. So I think that's really cool. And then this is my other really favorite one. I adore this. It's called Psychic Teleportation. If your psionic talent die is available, you can hurl your psychic blades to magically transport yourself to another location. As a bonus action, again, giving you a lot of ways to use the bonus action. You manifest one of your psychic blades and throw it to an unoccupied space you can see, up to a number of feet away equal to 5 times the highest number in your psionic talent die. So if you have a D6, that's the 30 feet. If you have a D12 at level 17, that's 60 feet. You then teleport to that space, the blade vanishes, and your psionic talent die decreases by 1 side. or size. I love this. If you've ever seen the Kingsglaive movie, the Final Fantasy Kingsglaive movie, that's one of the things that Kingsglaive do. They do it in Final Fantasy 15. I think they call it a warp strike, where they throw a weapon and then they teleport to the weapon. Vax had a really cool dagger that let him do that. It was one of the vestiges, I think. I might be wrong, but he had a dagger that let him to teleport. This just gives you that ability, and I can't tell you how much of a fun it is to be a teleporting character. Again, I play a shadow monk. I play a lot of different things, but my favorite character is a shadow monk who can bonus action shadow step. And that was so much fun because anytime I got grappled, I'm like, oh, don't worry. Like we were fighting an Utyug, which is not a fun creature to fight. And one of the things they do is when they hit you, they they can grapple you. And everyone else like, crap, he's been grappled. We have to find a way to break him out because he'll get to take all this damage. I said, don't worry about it. I'm immune to grapple. And the DM goes, what? No, you're not. I said, well, I can shadow step on my turn, which will break the grapple because I just disappear. So effectively, I'm kind of immune to grapple because anytime we're in the darkness or semi-darkness, I can just get out of it. And we were in a sewer, and everyone had the dark vision, so there were no lights. So yeah, I love this ability. This makes me even more excited for the class. I'm a little bit torn on the fact that it will reduce your die size. This is simply because I like to teleporting a lot, and this would massively limit that. But it does kind of make sense with all the other stuff it can do, and the fact that there are other classes that can teleport, having very strict limits. Like in bright lights, my monk can't teleport. So I can see it as a decent way to do it. When we get to the 13th level, you get what's called Psionic Veil. Which is just cool. As an action, you can magically become invisible along with anything you're wearing or carrying for 10 minutes or until you dismiss this effect, and then no action required. The invisibility ends if you deal damage to a creature or if you force a creature to make a saving throw. So the basics of it are you have a 10-minute invisibility spell. And this goes back to one of the other ways they've kind of found ways to use this as a psionic talent die, where once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, unless you decrease your psionic talent die by 1 die size to use this feature again. So once per long rest, you get a free invisibility spell. Which is really useful. Again, as a rogue, the ability to go invisible and sulk around, and even with that to teleport ability, the ability to just kind of bamf around and observe, unbelievably useful. And if you need it again, you can just burn one of your psionic talent dice down, which at this point you're at a D10, so it's possible that might only bring you down to a D8. And then anytime you use other psionic abilities where you get to roll the die, anytime you roll a 1, you're going to recharge the die back up. So that does give a really interesting idea of, well, I may be losing this, but I might be able to gain it back a little later. I don't know. It gives you a lot of choices, which I really like. So yeah, that's cool. And then this is the 17th level. It's called Rend Mind. which is when you use your psychic blades to deal sneak attack damage. So this is adding on to that sneak attack ability. The first one they've actually done that mentions sneak attack. When you deal sneak attack damage to a creature, you can force that target to make a wisdom saving throw, DC equal to 8, plus your proficiency bonus, plus your dex, which I find interesting because the last class wasn't intelligence based, where you needed a good intelligence score for all that. This one just lets you use your dex, which is interesting because the other kind of magical aspect of a rogue, the arcane trickster, actually requires you to have an intelligence score, where this one everything is done, which is dexterity. So I find it interesting. Unless this save succeeds, the target is stunned until the end of your next turn. And just like the last one, you get one use for free, and then you decrease your psionic talent die by one size to use it again. Stunning is massively useful for a ton of reasons. I've mentioned that monks are kind of built to use stunning to break up the action economy. This allows the Soulknife to do that to a lesser extent, because by 17th level, a monk can stun 17 times between short rests. This, you might get maybe 5 stuns if you want to save some of your psionic talent die for other stuff. So it's not nearly as powerful as the monk, as it shouldn't be. That's a monk defining feature. But it's still massively useful. It fits in with the theme of the class. It increases your sneak attack's usefulness, which is very good. Yeah, it's just an interesting thing. Now, the one kind of detriment to the Soulknife is it doesn't have a ton of abilities that it uses to actually cause rolls. A lot of the times when it's when you're doing things, it just decreases your die. So unless you're using the psi bolstered and the knack often, or using psychic whisper often, you're not getting as many chances to basically recharge your psionic talent die than again compared to the Psionic, where they have that telekinetic strike, where every turn they could choose to use it and possibly recharge their die and things like that. I think the Soulknife is going to be have a much harder decision about whether or not to use a lot of these abilities, simply because they can't recharge their psionic talent die nearly as easily or as quickly as a Psionic. So I'm not sure if that's going to create a balance issue or not. But I like how this class looks on paper. Again, all of these classes are subclasses are kind of built upon the psionic talent die, which I mentioned in my last video, has the possibility of being really overpowered, because if you're rolling ones often, it doesn't matter that you're decreasing your die for your more powerful moves. You're automatically recharging it as well. Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays. I'd like to see one of these characters at my table, just to get a better idea of what it will entail and whether or not it needs more balancing. Anyway, wanted this to be right around the 30 minutes. That's right about where we are, so that's where I'm going to end it. In the comments below, let me know what you think of the Soulknife, and specifically The abilities that if you were playing a Soul Knife, you think you would use the most. Do you think you'd be turning invisible all the time? Would you be like me and just teleporting everywhere? You know, what do you think about this particular subclass? Otherwise, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys in the next time. All right, bye bye.